Hi, this is Barbara Ray, and I'm looking forward to being with you at the Carling Black Label Springbok Radio Keep It Country show at the Rand Show on Saturday, 7th of April. Try and be there, because without you it won't be the same.
That's right, be there with cushions and blankets to ensure your seat to take part from 12:30 onwards when we kick off with the great competition Sweetheart of the Show. 1 o'clock, the talent competition. 2:20, Dickie and Carleen Loader. And at 3 o'clock, the top of the bill, Keep It Country. It is now 8:15.
Springbok Radio invites you to meet the three wise men and to test the team. Good evening and welcome to a program of general knowledge, questions and answers. The questions come from the listeners, the answers from our three pundits. So every Sunday night at this time, it's your business to test the team.
After a tough day's trail, a log cabin at sundown, and the smell of wood smoke from an evening cookout. That's the reward of the great outdoors, where men enjoy that feeling of freedom and wide open spaces. Your kind of life? Then Paul Revere is your cigarette. Paul Revere, rich taste, full flavor, the pride of tobaccos.
So now, just before you test the team, here's Dewey McCormack to introduce the team.
Hello again, and nice to be with you to swap the odds and ends of interest and information and to kick around your interesting questions. The other part is provided by the three team members, their respective microphones. In Johannesburg, Robert Blythe.
Good evening, everyone.
In Durban, Grant Loudon.
Good evening, all.
And in Cape Town, Anthony Beatry.
Good evening, listeners.
And I'm the sort of traffic cop directing the flow of questions. And here's the first one. It comes from Mr. Fred C. Harris of Rhodes Avenue, Newlands in Cape Town. From a statement made by the question master at the start of the program on New Year's Day, it would appear that the team is having a brief holiday during 1984. Can the team recall what the statement was? Is my neck red, Mr. Harris? Can the team rescue me? Otherwise, in all fairness, I'm going to ring up a jolly score if they don't remember.
What you said?
I said something, obviously, Robert.
Chaps, I have an idea he gave a wrong date.
No, not that. Anybody else want to tackle it?
Did he say a brief holiday, Joe?
Yes. Yes.
Is there anything in the word brief?
No, I'm going to ring up a score. It's a jolly good trap, a real good cop here, Mr. Fred C. Harris of Rhodes Avenue, Newlands. Mr. Harris says, I cannot repeat your exact words, doubtless you'll have a tape of them, but you stated that you looked forward to a very happy 52 programs during 1984. But 1984 has 53 Sundays. Has it? I suppose it has.
It's a leap year. Could be.
Someone's looked it up. Obviously, Mr. Harris has looked it up. So I reckon that's pretty fair, don't you?
Yes.
Jolly good score. First of the evening, right on the very first program, on the very first question, rather. So we'll be sending along the award. Now, Mr. Lawrence Malau, Putachi Harbour. Ooh, I always take a run at that name. Where does that come from, incidentally?
Putachi Harbour.
Yes.
It sounds like a hop, skip and jump question.
Robert?
No, I think that's the capital of Kwakwa.
It's the capital of Kwakwa, and it's almost to me. You know, I must really practice it. Putachi Harbour, I think it is. Anyway, Mr. Malau's question is, in Charles Dickens's David Copperfield, what name did Copperfield's aunt give him? Robert again?
I think it's Trot.
That's right.
Trot, yes.
It was actually, it was Trot, but it was really, Trot was an abbreviation of...
Trotwood.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
She was Betsy, wasn't she?
She was Betsy.
Trotwood. That's right, Trot. Now, Colonel Jeff Nettleton, Brighton Street, East London. Confederate Rifles, remember Jeff Nettleton, my goodness me, who took over command of the regiment at one stage of World War II. But he says, where would you expect to find an article which has ribs and knees, earrings, eyes, stays, bonnets, thimbles, and pins? Ooh, what a nasty one, Jeff Nettleton. Where would you expect to find, and he gives quotations, an article which has ribs and knees, earrings, eyes, stays, bonnets, thimbles, and pins? Grant.
Isn't that an umbrella?
No.
Where does knees come into an umbrella?
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
I thought the knees were those parts of the ribs which are joined halfway up the sides, you know?
see, there are very, many more parts here, Grant, than an umbrella could possibly
I don't
encompass.
know. Have you looked closely at an umbrella?
Robert?
I wonder if this is ship's rigging.
What are you saying? A sailing ship?
Yes.
You are
rigging
right,
of
of
a
course.
sailing
It's
ship.
a sailing
definitely.
ship. Has all those ribs, of course, in the actual hull, knees, etc., earrings, eyes, stays, bonnets, and the lot. It's a sailing ship. Nicely done, Robert. From Mr. T. Moodley of Aurora Place, Northdale, Petermaritzburg. What might your team enter near Chamonix in France and leave near Courmayeur in Italy? Anthony?
Well, that would be the tunnel.
That's right. Known as what? Grant?
The Mont Blanc tunnel.
Mont Blanc Road Tunnel. That's it. Correct. Now for Mr. S.H. Kleinhans of Paro. How many wings does a seraphim have? How many wings does a seraphim have, Robert?
6.
That's right.
3 pairs.
That's right. 3 pairs,
Yes.
actually. What does he do with them, do you know?
Well, he flies with 2,
Yes.
and he covers his feet with 2,
Yes.
and he covers his face with 2. I think it's Ezekiel.
Is Isaiah. Isaiah 6:2. That's right. Correct. Fully answered there. Obviously can't fly with 6. He'd become a little desynchronized, I should imagine. wouldn't he?
The mind boggles.
Mrs. S. Wilms of St. Andrew Street, Durban, who said, "It is a mistake to look too far ahead. Only one link of the chain of destiny can be handled at a time." Good question, this one, Mrs. Wilms. Anthony, what would you say to that?
This is one of our patron saints, isn't it?
Ah, no, I'm not going to answer that.
Yes,
question at all.
it's Winston Churchill.
Oh, we have adopted him as a patron.
Yes.
Of course, that's right.
Comes
I
up
thought-
often enough.
Oh, yes, it's not just Oscar and GBS and all the boys.
Mm.
No, Sir Winston Churchill, perfectly correct. Adrian Spano, age 14. Could the team please tell me who and when was the first man to make a successful glider flight? Glider flight. I'll start with our representative from the far north, Robert. You're in good form tonight.
I think it's usually attributed to a man called Otto Lilienthal.
That's what I've got
Around
here.
the 1890s, 1891, 92, I think.
1891, 92, but I don't know whether I haven't got a reservation which might be clarified by our Durban representative.
You know, there is a tradition, Dewar, in fact it's more than a tradition, that in the early 1880s, a young Natal farm boy named Goodman Household, I think, built himself a glider and had himself pushed off the edge of Otto's Bluff outside Petermaritzburg.
You're not mixing it up with Otto Lilienthal.
No. Otto's Bluff.
Yes. Listen, I've heard this one. Anthony, do you know this one about Goodman Household?
Yes, I do. I think it's correct. And dear Eric, in his encyclopedia, mentions that Goodman Household did these feats many years before Otto Lilienthal.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think the Standard Encyclopedia of Southern Africa's also got that fact.
Yes, I wonder. Back to you, Grant.
It's also as well to remember that Leonardo da Vinci designed a glider but didn't fly one, but that there were undoubtedly a few half-successful attempts at glider flying in the early 1880s, one of them by an Englishman.
Yes, a man called Stringfellow, I think
That's right.
his name was.
So there's a whole history of glider flying.
Oh, yes,
yes.
it goes back a long way.
I'd forgotten about Da Vinci, of course. I mean, among his many designs were gliders, weren't there?
Well, there was a glider. There was also one where you actually flapped the wings.
Yes, that was called an ornithopter.
Ornithopter.
That's right, ornithopter. Back to
Of course, you know, we could go right back to Greek mythology with Icarus and what was his father's name? Daedalus and Icarus. He certainly glided, if you believe the mythology.
The Greek word was glid.
Didn't they flap their wings? And they flapped the wings, and then, of course, the wings came off because the wax melted.
Yes,
Not a true glider, Robert. I'm sorry I faulted you there, my dear fellow. No, not a true glider. Anyway, there we have answered it a few, Adrian Spano, so there is some doubt about it, actually, although you will find it, and you have quoted the Eclipse Encyclopedia as Otto Lilienthal in 1891. So there's obviously a little bit of doubt about it. Now, I seem to remember that we've discussed in the past the origins of photography. who invented it and all that. Now, Dr. A.J. Hayes of St. Patrick Road, Hurleyvale, Edenvale, goes back many years to ask the team, and I have an idea that this was answered in a Sunday newspaper not so long ago, actually, because Dr. Hayes' question is held over from a little time prior to that, and I think it was answered. Who was Britain's first war cameraman? Anthony?
Well...
Did you know this, or did you see this article I'm talking about?
Well, I've seen the article, and I knew about it before that as well. He was a representative of what was then known in South Africa as the Warwick Trading Company. The resident man was a chap named Edgar Hyman, who actually took photographs actually filmed President Kruger.
Yes.
But when the Anglo-Boer War broke out, they sent out a representative from England, and his name was Joseph Rosenthal.
That's right.
And he was the one who was the first film man as far as South Africa is concerned.
But how come the Warwick Trading Company, which is down here in this supporting reference by Dr. Hayes...
the Warwick Trading Company owned the first cinemas in Johannesburg and showed the first Edison films, you see.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yes. And but Joseph Rosenthal made an even bigger name for himself in the Far East, because when he left South Africa, he took these famous pictures of the Russo-Japanese War. In fact, it's the only pictorial record of the war.
Really? Really? Well, there we are, fully answered by Anthony. Well, it happens to everybody, I'm sure, that you come upon a word that is new to you, and from then onwards is always cropping up. But here's a coincidence that befell one of our listeners, Mr. Frank Threadingham of Hillary Road, Hilton. Some weeks ago, when we were discussing that old riddle about, do you remember 2 legs sitting on 3 legs, holding 1 leg, and along comes 4 legs?
Yeah.
That was the dog running off with a leg of mutton. Well, Mr. Threadingham says that just a few minutes earlier, he'd been reading one of Charles Dickens's less successful novels, Hard Times, in which there's a reference to this ingenious allegory, as Dickens puts it. Well, considering it's one of his less successful novels, and you happen to be reading that particular one, Mr. Threadingham, just before the broadcast, I think that is a coincidence. Now, from Mr. J.S. Oldfield of Montpellier Road, Durban. When is a week not 7 days?
When it's spelt with an A.
What's a week? No. Never. You won't get away with that. No. When is a week not 7 days? It's a trick question.
What's wrong with the answer I gave you?
You are spelling it with 2 E's.
I'm not sure, Mr. Oldfield, that I can entirely agree with the phrasing of this question, because I think what you've given as the answer actually means a week. Grant?
You know, one of the... Is it Oxford that has an 8-week, which is a rowing competition each year, and it actually lasts 9 days?
Look, I'll tell you what Mr. Oldfield's got. He says when it's a sennight, S-E-N-N-I-G-H-T.
Well, that's 7 days.
That is a week, though, isn't it?
Yes, that's 7 days.
So it's one and the same thing.
Yes.
I don't think it really qualifies Mr. Oldfield. Anyway, now we go on to a question from Mr. C.A. Hirtley, writing from Hilton. Can the team give the origin of the word restaurant? A restaurant. I think we had this some couple of years ago. Anthony, give it to us briefly again.
Well, it's a place where one restores oneself. That's what it is.
But where's the restorative aspect come from? Grant?
It goes way back to the... Now, wait a minute. It's either the French... No, it wasn't. It was the Russia... the Franco-Prussian War.
No, it's earlier than that.
It was earlier, is it?
Thank you, Anthony.
The first restaurant was opened in Paris in 1766. Have you got that information there?
16th century France. So anyway,
1766 by a man named Boulanger.
Yeah.
And the idea of oneself, restaurant.
Yes, now, I'm sure that origins can differ. The explanation given here by Mr. Hirtley is that this particular restaurant proprietor used to make a very popular soup with great restorative properties. And so he put outside his premises a restaurant meaning, the process of restoring.
Yes.
And it became the name of the restaurant. But I think, yours is tenable, Anthony. I don't think anybody
well, that's more or less what
knows.
I said, isn't
Yes.
it? Yes. But you see, this was the very first establishment in Europe that was for food only. It wasn't an inn.
That's right. Well, there we are. There's restaurant, but it's just past halfway mark when we give the team a break so that they can come back refreshed for the second part of
and restored
tonight.
A lot of fine things have come out of America, and Winston cigarettes are right up there. Now you can get America's finest taste in king size in the soft pack America prefers. Yeah, Winston king size in the new soft pack and blended right here in your country. We're going to taste America, my Winstons and I.
Starting the second part of Test the Team for tonight, a question from Mr. W.H.G., or rather W.G.H. Waller, writing from Somerset West. Which is the easternmost and which is the westernmost state of the United States of America? Robert?
Easternmost would be Maine, unless you count Puerto Rico, which is not really a state, and the most westerly state would be, now, is it Hawaii or Alaska?
Well, let me take my coastal representative.
Maine is correct for the eastern state.
Let's hear what Grant says.
The westernmost is Alaska.
I think it's Alaska.
Yes,
and the easternmost is Alaska.
What do you say?
They're both the same.
Now, listen to this man here in Durban.
Don't forget that the international dateline, international dateline intersects.
He's got it. Oh, beautifully answered.
I wasn't sure whether the international dateline didn't kink past those Aleutian Islands.
There are two Aleutians apparently on the other side of the international dateline.
That's correct. Absolutely. The Aleutian Islands are the farthest west extension of the North American continent, and the farthest east as well, because in mid-sweep, the archipelago crosses 180 degrees into east longitude.
Yeah, so it actually goes past Maine then.
Right.
Oh, yes, well put.
Isn't that very interesting? So it's the Aleutian Islands that extend into to become the easternmost. Isn't that interesting? How did the town of Vereniging get its name? It's Mrs. P. Stacey of Springs asking that question. Vereniging. Anthony?
Well, it got its name from the name of a company which was established, I think, by Sammy Marks.
That's right.
It was the Iron and Steel Vereniging, I think it was...
it was called the Union Steel Company.
No, it wasn't that.
No, it was a much longer title than that, Anthony.
Yes, I know it had a long title.
Yes.
Do you want the actual name of the firm?
I'd like to know, yes, what will, if not the name of the firm, what it mined, ostensibly.
Well, I know they were, it was
It was a Vereniging, all right.
It was a Vereniging.
What was it? Grant?
Was that a firm that set out to mine coking coal for a smeltery?
Well, that's pretty well on the way, but can anybody complete it?
Steenkool was one of the names. Steenkool en Mineralenvereniging, wasn't it?
Now we got it. Er zijn Afrikaanse en Oranje Vrijstaatse kolen en mineralenmijnvereniging. And there you got it. I think you'll be happy with that, Mrs. Stacey, won't you? Hope you're happy with my pronunciation. From Michelle Anders of Palomino Way, Westridge, Mitchell's Plain, can the team tell me who climbed a sycamore tree so that he could see Jesus? Who climbed the sycamore tree?
Yes, he was a small guy, wasn't he?
That's
why
right.
he climbed. Yes, he was the chief of the publicans, wasn't he? And his name was Zacchaeus.
That's right. Were you going to say that, Robert?
Yes, Zacchaeus.
I think it's Zacchaeus, isn't it?
Yes, Zacchaeus.
And where did this take place, incidentally?
Is it in Bethany?
It's not part of the question. It happens to have been Jericho, to the best of my knowledge. It was actually in Jericho as Jesus passed by. And I think, didn't he call Zacchaeus down, or Zacchaeus down from the tree?
That's right.
And indicate he wanted to stay with him that night?
Yes.
And wasn't Zacchaeus a tax collector?
He was chief of the publicans.
Chief of the publicans.
Yes, he would have been a tax collector.
Mind you, publicans these days are great tax collectors for the government, aren't they? I mean, all that, revenue that they collect for the government. From Mrs. M. Pierce of 2nd Avenue, Kenilworth, how long in minutes in minutes, was the war between Zanzibar and Britain. And I'm afraid, gentlemen, I'll have to pin you down pretty carefully, Grant.
It was about 25.
Robert.
Now, I have an idea it's a bit closer to about between 35 and 40 minutes.
No, actually, he's right, of course. But now, Anthony, you've got the chance of a lifetime.
Well, it started, I think, at 9:02 and finished at 9:40, I think.
And that makes
38 minutes.
And it's 38 minutes I got here.
It was Admiral Rawdon's bombardment of Zanzibar.
Yes.
But it's the shortest war in history. It took place in 1896.
What happened? Did the Admiral pop off a couple of guns and the Sultan said that's enough?
Probably, yes. Well, there was a sort of... this Sultan was deposed, and apparently he was a usurping Sultan.
Yes.
And the other guy put in place of him. Yes. And Admiral Rawdon was awarded the Order of the Golden Star from the new Sultan.
Was it? Mm. Anybody ever visit Zanzibar in the old days? Oh, what a wonderful place. I've been there a couple of times. It was absolutely terrific. What year was it, incidentally?
1896.
27th August, 1896. Now, from Mrs. Kate Tudor of Dunkirk Place, Umbelo, Durban, do the three wise men know the meaning of ergonomics? Ergonomics, Grant.
It's the study of one of the dirtiest words in the English language. It's a four-letter word, too.
What is
work.
Work. Oh. But it's a little more than that.
Ergonomics is the study of the methods of doing work.
Robert, what would you say?
It's works. Yes, I would call it work study with the aim of doing things as efficiently as possible.
Time divisions and things like that.
Yes. I think I'm going to let them have it, Mrs. Tudor. I would say that it includes that, but it also includes as well making sure the tools and equipment, are suitable for doing the job efficiently. But I think probably what you said embraced that as well, ergonomics.
I always remember my physics master at school who used, when we were working in the CGS system, used to say, remember the unit of work is an erg, and it's ergsome work you have to do.
Sounds like Grant Loudon at work. Eh? Are those puns of his?
Ergonomic.
From Raylene Watson of Thunderbale Park, who wrote Gesta Berling, G-O with two dots over the O-S-T-A, Berling, B-E-R-L-I-N-G. Anthony?
Well, it was a Swedish lady. Yes. She was the first woman to win a Nobel Prize for literature, and her name was Selma Lagerlöf.
That's it? Great child's story, that.
Yes.
Gesta Berling, among many other lovely children's stories.
They made it into a film as well. It was one of Greta Garbo's first ones, which she made in Sweden.
Was it? So it wasn't a child's story, Miss?
No, I think it was a series of child stories.
Oh, it was.
Probably,
yes. Now, from Jesmond Road, Kenilworth, Mr. L.P. Curling. This is recently a questioner asked what was Luke's profession, the biblical Luke. The answer given, he was a physician, which is supported by a biblical reference, Colossians 4:14. However, Anthony Vetri then added he was also a painter.
Yes.
Now, says Mr. Curling, this is a subject of great interest to me, and I can find no support for this statement other than the illustration in Encyclopedia Britannica, Volume 2, dated in the 16th century. Can Anthony Vetri produce something more solid and more contemporary?
Yes, I think so. He is by Christian tradition, a painter. And he's also the patron saint of painting and painters, so proclaimed by the Pope, you see.
Yes. If you look up the Oxford Companion to English Literature, as I did, you'll see by tradition a physician and painter, which is a very brief reference to Luke, but there is enough for me, Mr. Curling. Nice one submitted by Jim Honigsberger of Clarkstor. Does the team know how Arthur Dudley Norse got his first names? How did Dudley Norse get his first names? Back to you, Anthony.
Well, the Dudley part, he was supposed to have got from a Governor-General, not of South Africa, but of Australia. When he was playing cricket in Australia, apparently at the time, the Governor-General was the Earl of Dudley.
Mm-hmm. Yes, well, I've got Governor-General of South Australia, but I don't think South Australia ever had a governor.
No.
Lieutenant Governor.
It would be a Governor-General of Australia.
Yes, they may have had state governors in those days, I don't know. Okay, that's fine, that's what he's got now. What about his first name? That accounts for the Dudley. Arthur came from where, Grant?
Well, I think his father's name was Arthur.
That's right. It's simple. Named after
David.
his dad. You must have known Dudley North in the old days, Grant.
Yes, I did, and in fact, Dudley rather waved aside the story about where his name came from. I've seen it reported, but Dudley himself was by no means specific on it.
Oh, really?
No.
So it sounds a little romantic story.
It could be.
Anyway, that's it for this evening, team and listeners. We'll see how you fare against the team next week. Meanwhile, remember, your questions, ingenious as you can make them, will be very welcome, addressed to Test the Team, SABC, Box 2551, Cape Town 8000. And now, just before we sign off, a word from the marketplace.
Discover real smoking pleasure. Paul Revere. Rich and mellow tobaccos, blended by experts, to give you a taste that rewards like the great outdoors. That's Paul Revere for sure. Rich taste, full flavor. Paul Revere, the pride of tobaccos.
Goodbye now from Grant Loudon in Durban.
Good night, all.
Anthony Vetch in Cape Town.
Good night, listeners.
Robert Blythe in Johannesburg.
Good night, everyone.
And from your Quizmaster in Cape Town, until next Sunday at the same time, goodbye.
Dewar McCormack and our trio of experts will be back next Sunday evening at 8:15, inviting you again to test the team.
You never know what kind of music to expect in Late Night Date presented by Esme Everard. Sunday evenings from 10:36 to midnight, you can hear popular melodies from operettas or musicals and South African artists, both English and Afrikaans, and usually a few folk songs from other countries as well. Remember, it's the program Late Night Date with Esme Everard on Springbok Radio. It is now 8:45.
The deciding factor. Stories of people reaching crossroads in their lives.
And how's the launch of the new computer going?
Oh, well enough. Jackson seems to have everything under control.
Once you've got it out to the branches, you must take a rest for a while. You're pushing yourself too hard.
I have to. Competitors are snapping at our heels. If we don't keep introducing faster and better equipment, we'll be one of the also-rans instead of number one.
That's very important to you, isn't it?
Of course. Having built up this business and taken over half a dozen inefficient operations to let it all slip now.
But the pressure is always on you, John. Let someone else share the responsibility. You've done well enough. You can afford to guide the company instead of being in the thick of it all.
That's the way I like it, Helen. Without that stimulus, I'd stagnate.
I think you're making a mistake, darling. You're frowning more these days. Smoking too much. You don't even have time for a game of tennis. I'm worried about you.
You don't have to worry about a thing. I'm perfectly fit and healthy. Next month, we'll go away for a quiet weekend. How's that?
As long as nothing crops up like it has before.
This time I'll make sure it doesn't. I'm going to read through some reports before going to bed. If you're asleep, don't forget that I'll be home late tomorrow night. Cocktail party for the launch.
All right. Don't stay up too late. Night.
I won't. Good night. Sleep well.